What if China is quietly stepping back from the US dollar? It's not because of normal market changes, but because of safety concerns. Not because interest rates went up, and not because of the daily ups and downs of trading, but because something important has been broken. Over the last 2 years, the United States and its partners froze many billions of dollars in Russian money held overseas. This money was always thought to be completely secure, kept in Western banks for safekeeping. Now that money is being used to help Ukraine. For many countries watching this, the message is simple: if you keep your money in US dollars, it's only truly yours until politics decides otherwise. This move was not just against Russia, it was a warning to the whole world. And Beijing definitely saw it. China holds one of the largest amounts of US financial assets in the world. For many years, they saw this as safe, easy to use, and untouchable. Now, it suddenly looks like a weakness, a tool that could be used against them in a future disagreement, especially as tensions grow over Taiwan, technology, and world trade control. Here is what most people are not talking about: China is not making big announcements about selling off its dollars. There are no press conferences, no loud statements, and no panic. Instead, the change is silent. It is happening slowly, hidden in financial records and regular reports. They are letting US bonds reach their end date without buying new ones. They are purchasing more gold. They are settling trade deals using their own currency, the yuan. These are not sudden, emotional acts. They are careful, long-term decisions. And this is the serious part: when a country like China starts getting ready for a world where the dollar cannot be completely trusted, it changes everything. This affects world trade, energy costs, interest rates, and even your personal savings. The dollar is not just money, it is the foundation of modern finance. If that foundation begins to weaken, even gradually, the impact will be felt everywhere. You might hear people say China cannot suddenly dump the dollar because it would hurt their own finances. That is true. A quick sale would severely damage the value of their own money. But here is the lesser known fact: they don't need to sell fast. They just need to stop believing in it the same way they used to. Slowly reducing their risk, quietly creating other options, and letting time do the work. And they are not the only ones. More countries are signing trade agreements that do not use the dollar. Central banks are buying gold at record levels. Even traditional friends of the United States are looking for ways to rely less on the dollar. This is not about starting a fight. It is about being careful. So the real question is not if China is selling all its dollars overnight. The real question is why they no longer trust the financial system that once helped them become wealthy. And if one of the biggest players in the global economy is planning for a world without the dollar at the center, what do they know is coming that most people do not? In this video, you will learn what caused this quiet change, how the freezing of Russian money changed global thinking, how China is moving its money without causing market crashes, and what this means for the future of the dollar, global power, and your finances. Stick with us until the end, because we will also show you a few events and hints that major news sources rarely connect, but which together paint a much larger picture. This is not just about currency, it is about power. It is about trust. And it is about what happens when that trust disappears. Welcome to our channel, where we explain shifts in global power using simple words. If you appreciate deep explanations without the confusing jargon, subscribe now and stay informed about what is coming next. China did not gather huge holdings of US government debt by accident. It was a natural result of their growth driven by exports. For many years, China sold massive amounts of goods to American buyers. Those sales were paid for in dollars. Instead of leaving those dollars unused, China's central bank put them into US government bonds, called treasuries. These bonds were easy to buy and sell, stable, and considered the safest place to keep large sums of money. This also helped China manage its own currency. By buying dollars and investing them, they kept the yuan weaker, which made Chinese goods cheaper and more attractive around the world. This helped factories, jobs, and long-term industrial growth. At its highest point, China's US Treasury holdings went over $100 trillion. For years, they were the biggest foreign holder of American debt. That amount showed how deeply China was connected to the dollar system. But over time, those numbers began to slowly drop. Month after month, year after year, the holdings decreased. This was not just because of market conditions. It showed a planned change in direction. This shift is often called de-dollarization. It means becoming less dependent on the US dollar as the main currency for international reserves and trade payments. China started to diversify by moving money into gold, setting up currency exchange agreements with other nations, and using the yuan for more trade payments. They also created alternative payment systems to reduce their reliance on Western financial networks. This was not a sudden rejection of the dollar, but a gradual adjustment driven by concerns over risk, political tensions, and a long-term goal to make China less vulnerable to outside financial pressure. Over the last decade, the United States has increasingly used the dollar as a tool of pressure through penalties, freezing assets, and limiting access to financial systems. It has shown that controlling the world's main reserve currency also means controlling who can fully take part in global finance. For countries that rely heavily on the dollar, this creates a new kind of weakness. Your reserves are no longer just savings. They become leverage that can be used during times of political conflict. This fear grew sharply when Russian foreign reserves held in Western banks were frozen and later redirected to support Ukraine. These reserves were supposed to be protected by international financial rules. Instead, they became tools of punishment. For Beijing, this was a clear, unspoken message. If a major power like Russia could lose access to its own money, then no country is completely safe, especially one involved in strategic competition with the United States. At the same time, economic issues added more pressure. As US interest rates went up quickly, the prices of existing bonds fell. This reduced the market value of the treasury bonds, including those held by China. On paper, these assets lost value, creating hidden financial strain. Holding too many long-term dollar bonds started to look less like safety and more like a risk. So, China began to change its reserve strategy. They increased gold purchases, building physical reserves that cannot be frozen by another country. They increased investments in non-dollar assets, including bonds from other countries and raw materials. They strengthened regional trade settlements using their own currency and set up bilateral currency agreements to reduce dollar dependence. This shift is not driven by panic. It looks like a carefully thought out way to manage risk, reducing risk without causing a shock, diversifying without messing up markets, and preparing for several possible futures instead of trusting only one system. It shows a slow change in position in a world where finance is no longer neutral, and where power now flows through financial records as much as through armies. China's way of reducing its dollar exposure is not loud or aggressive. Instead of suddenly selling large amounts of US treasuries and causing global market shocks, they have chosen a quieter path. Many of their bonds are simply allowed to reach their end date. When a bond matures, the United States pays back the original amount. China then chooses not to use that money to buy new treasuries. This method lowers their exposure without creating panic or crashing prices. It looks calm on the outside, but over time, it steadily reduces the total size of China's dollar holdings. Another part of this involves how these assets are held. Some of the treasuries linked to China do not appear directly under its own name. Some are managed through financial firms. There is a reason China cannot just dump its dollar assets, even if it wanted to. A fast, large-scale sale of US treasuries would cause bond prices to collapse, which would immediately destroy the value of the very assets China is trying to move away from. It would be massive financial self-harm. The losses would be real, immediate, and painful. That is why any change must be slow and careful, spread out over years rather than weeks. There is also the currency problem. If China sells huge amounts of dollars, it would naturally increase the demand for the yuan. A stronger yuan makes Chinese exports more expensive for foreign buyers. This directly harms the heart of China's economy, which relies heavily on competitive exports. Factories, jobs, and growth all depend on keeping its currency value in a careful balance. Too much increase in value would weaken its global position. This is why China's plan looks slow and controlled. It is not about sending a message. It is about protecting itself during a long change, reducing risk without creating new ones, stepping back without overturning the system. But the effects do not stop with China. If major holders like China keep reducing their US debt holdings, it increases pressure on the US bond market. Fewer buyers means lower demand. Lower demand means interest rates yields get higher. Higher rates increase the cost of borrowing for the United States and affect interest rates worldwide. Mortgages, business loans, and government borrowing across the globe become more expensive. developing countries feel extra pressure as money moves back toward high-interest U.S. assets. This also changes trust in global finance. When big players quietly move away, others notice. Smaller economies and central banks may follow, not out of opposing the U.S., but out of caution. This causes a slow rebalancing of world money flows, where the dollar remains strong but no longer totally dominant. China is not moving alone. All over the world, other countries are quietly adjusting their financial positions. Some are reducing the amount of dollars in their foreign reserves. Others are settling trade in their local currencies instead of the US dollar. This does not mean the dollar is going away, but it does show a gradual change in how countries handle risk. Nations that once relied heavily on the dollar system are now looking for more balance, more flexibility, and more control over their own money channels. At the heart of this shift is gold. Central banks have been increasing their gold reserves at levels not seen in decades. Gold is a physical asset. It cannot be frozen by foreign governments. It does not depend on digital payment systems controlled by any single power. Along with gold, regional currency systems are growing. More trade between large economies is being paid for in their own currencies, reducing the need to use the dollar for conversion. New payment platforms and clearing systems are being built to support this change. This is where finance becomes about geopolitics. Currency is no longer just a way to exchange goods. It is a form of influence. It decides who has access to money, who can be isolated, and who can survive sanctions. When countries reduce their dependence on one currency, they are not only making an economic choice, they are making a strategic one. They are reshaping power relationships, slowly moving from a single center of power to a more spread out global financial order. So, we come back to the main point. Is China's move away from US dollar assets a panicked reaction? Or is it a signal? A signal that the rules have changed. A signal that financial safety is no longer guaranteed by old habits. A signal that power is shifting from loud statements to quiet preparation. If China keeps reducing its risk and others follow, dollar dominance will not suddenly collapse, but it will begin to thin out. Influence will spread. Alternatives will become stronger. The dollar will remain powerful, but not completely without challengers. A world with multiple financial centers will start to emerge. If China moves carefully, step by step, it could reduce its risk without breaking the system that still supports world trade. A slow reduction, a controlled change. No sudden shock, no chaos, just a gradual rebalancing that most people only notice when it is already well underway. But history shows that big changes rarely announce themselves early. They happen in the background, in data, in policy changes, in small decisions that look unimportant until they connect into something bigger. And now, the question about the future matters more than anything else. Are we moving toward more de-dollarization, an even stronger rush into gold, or the creation of a completely new reserve system that changes how global money works? That future is still being created. If this video helped you understand the bigger picture, support the channel by liking this video. Subscribe for more deep, simple explanations of global power, money, and economics. And stay with us, because the next major change might not be announced, but it will change everything.